are wholly repugnant to the Conservative Party, and his absence from the next Parliament will not be widely mourned.
But opponents say William Hague and the Conservatives should go the whole hog and sack John Tannen.
William Hague has got to absolutely wipe out any implication here that he would associate himself with what John Tannen thinks or believes on any of these matters, asylum, immigration or race. And if he can't do that, quite frankly, that's a real failure of leadership.
The dilemma for Mr Hague is that if he disciplines Mr Tannen now, his critics will say that he's acted too late and that he's vacillated. On the other hand, there's no indication that Mr Tannen's going to desist from making his remarks or that the row inside and outside the party is going away. John Draper, ITN, a Conservative Central Office.
Farmers gave a cautious welcome today to the idea that in the future they could be paid to look after the countryside rather than produce food. It's one proposal being put forward to help their industry recover from foot and mouth. There was another positive sign today when restrictions on 1,300 farms in the southwest were relaxed. Here's Tim Wilcox.
The empty fields of Cumbria today. Land which, according to Agriculture Minister Nick Brown, could, in a future post-foot and mouth Britain, be farmed for conservation rather than food production.
Farming has to respond to what we, the public, want it to provide. There are important environmental and countryside custodian roles that farming carries out, actually for free. It's quite unusual to explicitly pay for these things. I believe we should.
But such plans would need changes to the Common Agricultural Policy and have to provide guarantees for farmers who've seen their herds destroyed.
We don't want to be park keepers. We want to be farmers. He needs to sit down with the farmers and perhaps more the younger generation like myself and come up with a plan that will suit everybody, you know, because these fields need farming. It's as simple as that.
On day 67 of the crisis, there were 10 new cases. That brings the total of confirmed cases to 1,505. So far, nearly 2,300,000 animals have been slaughtered, 126,000 await slaughter. While some mass burial pits are still being dug, weeks of rain has meant others like this one at Welshpool are having to be re-excavated and the carcasses exhumed. Body fluids of the dead animals here now dangerously close to the water table. Evidence, say some farmers locally, of the whole shambles of the 10-week crisis. Tim Wilcox, ITN.
Meanwhile, it's been revealed that tests on all the people who had been suspected of contracting foot and mouth have proved negative, although another 2 new cases are being checked. American Dennis Tito has blasted off on the world's most expensive package holiday. He's successfully heading for the International Space Station after paying the Russians more than £13 million to send him into space. But, as Robert Moore reports, the adventures of the amateur astronaut have angered the Americans.
It was not conventional holiday clothing, but then Dennis Tito is going where no tourist has gone before. A quick photograph for the family album. Exhilaration from the multi-millionaire as his dream flight approached. Alongside the 2 Russian cosmonauts in the Soyuz capsule, the American businessman was strapped in for the ride of a lifetime. As agreed with the Russians, as the engines ignited, $20 million was transferred electronically from Tito's bank account to the account of the Russian Space Agency. It was a flawless launch into the clear sky over Central Asia. A video link from the capsule showed Tito impassive as he became the world's first tourist to roar into space. His home for a week will be the International Space Station, although NASA has been deeply reluctant to let an amateur aboard. Serious computer problems aboard the station are being resolved, although the Soyuz docking may be delayed since the shuttle Endeavour is still attached to the space station. The Russian space program is now richer by some $20 million, and as Moscow sees it, this is just the start. Several others are negotiating for rides aboard Russian rockets. Dennis Tito appears to have pioneered a whole new concept in adventure travel. Robert Moore, ITN, Moscow.
If you tried to phone a friend today, you might have been unlucky. 4 million mobile phone numbers have been changed, and predictably it's caused problems, with more than a quarter of calls being made to the wrong numbers. David Harrison explains.
1 in 10 mobile phone users awoke this morning to find their numbers had changed, making many people uncontactable. Millions of mobile numbers have been thrown on the scrap heap to make way for extra phone users. The result, more than a quarter of people trying to call mobiles with old numbers today failed to use the new numbers and failed to get through.
There were always going to be missed dials, and we have taken a huge number of calls to our helpline centre. So that indicates to me that a lot of people have taken on board the message from the advertising and have found out what the new numbers are and have made the change.
But for many small businesses, the change means often expensive re-advertising of their numbers.
Unfortunately, I mean, a lot of our calls at the weekend all come through on an emergency mobile number, which means that our business is definitely going to suffer.
And the changes have left many mobile users confused.
I don't know how to do it, actually. I had the piece of paper and my wife's thrown it away.
It was 0956, now it's 07956.
Have many people called you?
No one.
And the confusion's expected to continue. David Harrison, ITN.
Preparations are underway for a special concert that's being held this weekend to honour Nelson Mandela and celebrate the end of apartheid in South Africa. That's tomorrow. Today, Mr. Mandela was opening new buildings at a cathedral in South London. Here's Robin Powell.
They turned out in their thousands to catch a glimpse of him. Visiting foreign dignitaries don't come any more popular than Nelson Mandela. And the feeling apparently is mutual. The former South African president said he was glad to be in Britain.
Its history is closely associated with our country, and therefore culturally we share many fundamentals, and I'm very happy always to be here.
Meanwhile, in Trafalgar Square, preparations are underway for a concert tomorrow to mark South Africa Freedom Day. Throughout the 60s, 70s and 80s, the square was the venue for regular protests against apartheid.
This is a celebration to thank all the British people, telling them we thank them for their support, and we still want the support to continue consolidating our new democracy.
Rock group REM and singer Beverly Knight, both due to perform at the concert, have been paying tribute to Nelson Mandela.
He's a hero. I think he sets a brilliant example.
For me, he's the embodiment of struggle and achievement through nothing more but focus and drive. He's an incredible man.
Mr. Mandela also insisted in celebrating in a church, Southwark Cathedral. The defeat of apartheid, he said, was an example of faith in action. Robin Powell, ITN.
Now with all the sports news, here's Graham, and it's a big European week ahead for Leeds and another win today for them.
Certainly was, and certainly is. They don't really want this season to end, Leeds. They made it 6 wins in a row, with 2 goals in the last 5 minutes to beat Chelsea. It means they're guaranteed European football for a 4th successive season, and of course they've still got that Champions League semi-final with Valencia to come. Richard Cook reports.
With the place in next season's Champions League so important, this was a vital match for both sides. Chelsea made the brighter start and nearly went in front when Leeds' Ian Hart forced his own goalkeeper into action. It was their only real chance in the first half, and after the break, Leeds began to take control. Lee Bowyer first with a shot, then with a header bringing out the best of Carlo Cudicini in the Chelsea goal. Leeds didn't have it all their own way. Zola went close from long range. But with 5 minutes to go, Leeds got the breakthrough they deserved. Eric Bakker's clever touch setting Robbie Keane free to score at the second attempt. The Republic of Ireland international had only been on the pitch 4 minutes. With time fast running out, Leeds got a second. Mark Viduka rounding off their 6th successive victory. Final score, Leeds 2, Chelsea 0. Richard Cook, ITN Sport.
The battle for places at the top and bottom of the Premiership is beginning to sort itself out with just a handful of matches to go now. Arsenal are leading the race to join Manchester United in the Champions League, and they've beaten struggling Derby 2-1. Kanu put the Gunners in front as they look to consolidate second place. Stefano Iranio equalised for Derby. Now they hoped that would earn them a vital point, but Robert Pires got the winner for Arsenal to put the pressure back on Derby. Manchester City are still hanging on by their fingertips after beating West Ham by 1-0. An own goal from Ian Pearce was enough to give City their 3 vital points as West Ham went down to their 8th defeat in 9 games. City manager Joe Royle now has just 2 matches left to work his miracle, but the games are against Ipswich and Chelsea. It's all over, though, for Bradford after they lost at Everton by 2-1. Andy Myers has given them hope, putting Bradford into an early lead. Now, Bradford had won their last 2 games, but Duncan Ferguson equalised just after the break, and Nicholas Alexanderson got the Everton winner to send Bradford back to the First Division. Bradford also managed to miss 2 penalties. Now let's check on all the top results in England and Scotland, starting with the FA Carling Premiership. Charlton-Ipswich match postponed. Coventry 0, Liverpool 2, Derby 1, Arsenal 2, Everton 2, Bradford 1, Leeds 2, Chelsea 0, Manchester City 1, West Ham United 0, Middlesbrough 0, Manchester United 2, Newcastle 1, Leicester 0, Southampton 0, Sunderland 1, Tottenham 0, Aston Villa 0. The Nationwide League Division 1, Barnsley-Bolton is an evening kick-off. Birmingham 1, Grimsby 0, Blackburn-Portsmouth postponed, Crewe 1, Preston 3, Crystal Palace 0, Wolves 2, Fulham 1, Wimbledon 1, Norwich 1, Sheffield Wednesday 0, Nottingham Forest 0, Gillingham 1, Queen's Park Rangers 0, Stockport 3, Sheffield United 2, Burnley 0, Watford 1, Tranmere 1, West Bromwich Albion 1, Huddersfield 1. The Bank of Scotland Scottish Premier League, Dundee United 1, Motherwell 0, Dunfermline 1, St Mirren 2, and St Johnstone 0, Aberdeen 3. So straight to the table, starting with the top of the Premiership here in England, and Manchester United, they moved on to 80 points with that 2-0 win against Middlesbrough. But look at what's happening behind them. Arsenal consolidating that 2nd place with a 2-1 win over Derby. Leeds climbed to 3rd with that 2-0 win over Chelsea. Ipswich play on Monday. And Liverpool won again today, 2-0 against Coventry. Chelsea stay 6th after that 2-0 defeat at Leeds. At the bottom, there's confirmation. Bradford back down to the First Division after losing 2-1 at Everton this afternoon. Manchester City, they climbed to 18th, hanging on by their fingertips after beating West Ham by 1-0. Coventry slipping down to 19th, same number of points after losing to Liverpool, and Derby in 17th place, having lost 1-2, I should say, to Arsenal. Into the First Division, Fulham moved on to 101 points, but now behind them, if Bolton lose tonight, they play Barnsley at 6 o'clock, and Blackburn win tomorrow at Portsmouth, then Blackburn will be promoted. And behind them, West Bromwich Albion, Preston and Birmingham City this afternoon, well, they all confirmed their places in the playoffs. Now, on to the pools news. Here come this afternoon's numbers. 6 score draws. Here they are: 12, 17, 18, 21, 30 and 45. 2 no-score draws, numbers 37 and 47, and don't forget that evening 6 o'clock match to come. On to Rugby League, and the St Helens success story goes on and on. The team that holds all the big prizes in the sport this afternoon added the Silk Cup Challenge Cup to their collection. At Twickenham, they beat Bradford in the 100th final by 13 points to 6. Peter Staunton reports.
It was rugby, but not as they know it down Twickenham Way. Pop stars on the pitch. The crowd hadn't been drinking champagne in the West Car Park. Even before the kick-off, a century of tradition was being dismantled as the Prime Minister welcomed the stars of the Northern Game to the home of the Union. They'd promised one of the greatest matches ever seen at Twickenham. It was never that, partly due to the incessant downpour, but it was a game of relentless action. St Helens making the early breakthrough thanks to Tommy Martin. Another clever kick from